Welcome to your Transition to Changes Mission podcast show with your host, King Summers.
And your host, Queen Summers.
We appreciate you tuning in to the show. If you like us, share us, follow us at Spreaker.com or go to the website at transitionalchangesmission.wordpress.com. You just tuned into what we promised to all the audience. We got a special guest tonight, and he is a finance machine. He can help everything within finance. He's going to speak about that, give us some tips on these numbers of the topic that we're talking about, and also we're going to twist this with family homelessness. But we sure appreciate you tuning in. Get ready now.
And despite decades of efforts by public, private, and social sector organizations, racial inequality has only increased in 2021. The mission to end family homelessness starts with us all, with having the goal of expanding our minds to learning and practicing ways to transition into changing. And just like we need air to breathe in the society that Americans live in, that also includes money for even the basics of survival, which is why tonight we're talking numbers. And thank you so much for tuning in. If you're liking our show, if this is your first time visiting, or your 10th time, or your 37th time visiting, we like to thank you. And always follow us at www.transitionalchangesmission.wordpress.com. So we're going to get into this topic tonight
as soon as we get back with you. So you go ahead and gather your things together, get everybody up, call them, turn on your TV, turn on your podcast show or the Transition to Changes Mission podcast show, and we finna go in. Thank you.
Welcome back to Transitional Changes Mission podcast show. This is your host, Queen Summers.
And your host, King Summers, with the special guest, King J.
The ramifications can prove devastating as good credit impacts everything from mortgage rates to hiring decisions by employers, which is why we have a special guest tonight who can provide us all with vital information about credit and why it's so important to establish it. King J, Transitional Changes Mission, Inc., welcome you to our show and thank you for joining us tonight.
Yes, we do.
Could you break down what is credit and why it's so important for people to have?
That's a good question. Credit is pretty much a vital component in our everyday life. It's a vein in the finance of everything that we do. You know, they're going to run your credit for a phone, for cards, for apartments, for jobs, for insurance, you know, and the list goes on. And we just want to kind of provide you with information and tips on how to be informed moving in the direction that things are headed.
And that's wonderful. Thank you so much for providing this vital information. And I wanted to ask another question. What are some common pitfalls that the young adults make when they're trying to establish credit? Because, you know, we have the young people want to get cars after graduation and all kind of things like that. So could you provide us with what their pitfalls, common pitfalls are?
Well, most of the common pitfalls is not actually actively monitoring your report and understanding the credit report, knowing where you are and where you stand and what options you have before you go in to purchase something. We don't have this information, balances, misappropriation, overutilization of credit card, bunch of applying for different types of credit without understanding vendor credit, supplier credit, retail credit, you know, just information and resources.
Right.
I agree with that, King J, because that's one thing I've been promoting Transition to Changes is that what you talking about or leading to talk about, that everything is a process. And I feel like at this time with the pandemic, put a stop to everything. It feels like, and I'm going to ask the audience, do it feel like they hit a stop button at everything? Just like the Nintendo when the game mess up, you have to push the two buttons together and make it reset.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going on at this time and era with everybody in the world. Came to a stop, and I've always been promoting that this is an opportunity. You can take it as an opportunity and look at what lies before you. If you have bad credit, you got this show here, Transition to Changes with King J. He is a credit consultant. He got his own company that can fix your credit, and he can give you a lot more knowledge about credit. And that's what we're going to talk about on this show tonight. We are talking about how we can start this process and how you can embed this process in you to keep your future good with credit and everything.
Yes, that's right.
Don't you agree, King J?
Absolutely. That's spot on.
Mm-hmm. Now, I wanted to ask you a question, King J, because I know there's some listeners out there that's probably wondering, how do you get your first credit card when the lenders want to see your credit history before approving you?
That's a good question, Queen Summers. Like I piggyback off what I mentioned before, having the information and knowing, having specific guidance when you go about, trying to make a purchase, to do something, knowing what your options are, where you stand.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to what they're looking at. But just about just filling out the application and having the income to support that. A lot of times, sometimes it may require you to put up, like now I got a company that we use and they'll start you off with a $300 limit. And, this is from experience. I had the card,
Okay.
It was $300 limit. At the time, I didn't have to pay anything for it. They just provided the $300 limit, and I just used it for gas. I gas up every week, $25, and at the end of the month, I just made the credit card payment. In my eyes, I'm looking at it like I'm leaving a paper trail because I can go take this $25 cash in a gas station and give them the money and get the gas and drive the gas out, and then I got to fill it up again. I need to have my money working for me. So
that's right. Yes, I agree.
Applying for the credit card, getting a $300 limit on there. That was the gas card, and I just used it specifically for gas, and I had that $25 that I'm paying a week or that $100 I'm paying out a month is working for me because I'm getting the gas, they're getting the money, and I'm getting a credit boost on the back end for the same $25 that I was just spending and getting nothing for it, but gas that I was just consuming and running out. So it just tips like that. Once you get the card, just knowing how to use it and just being disciplined with it. And that's one of the things that we show you how to do is get the card, and we walk A to Z throughout the process, how to do it, and actively monitoring the card and knowing where you at. That way you can keep the balances, between 50, no more than 50, between 50 and 30%.
Now, I'm going to see if anybody been paying attention to our shows and what is that last previous show name was. It was called No Excuse.
No excuses.
After you get finished hearing this exciting show here with knowledge from King J and me, King Summers and Queen Summers, we don't need no more excuses because it's time to build. Like I said before, this is an opportunity to build off from the past to the future. And how does this ties up with family homeless? It always ties up because one, you need credit to purchase a home.
Mm-hmm.
But one, you need to know how to budget your finance to keep a home.
Mm-hmm.
And all these things ties into other items that you are trying to accumulate in your life. Cars, needs planning, and schedule. And that's why we got King J here to help our audience to embrace, because we got to get all that finance knowledge before we be able to open up that new door to a new home. That means that we need the knowledge of this process that King J said that some people has not been paying attention to or skipped over in life. But it's never too late in life to get right.
That's right. And if you are enjoying our show this evening, please write to us at tcmissionspeak@gmail.com, or you can call us at 910-985-9090. Now, the term meta-oppression, have you heard of it? It's the depression that comes from having already dealt with oppression for an extended period of time. Debt problems facing these communities are not solely due to personal financial choices or a lack of responsibility. Community members that we interviewed took multiple actions to address their debt. Instead, debt troubles have been compounded over generations of discriminatory financial practices sanctioned through an endless series of public policy choices. These choices have boosted the economic potential of white households while diminishing or outright blocking economic mobility for communities of color. So, King J, I wanted to ask you, knowing that term of mental oppression and dealing with our community, how do you bring in members of our community for credit counseling?
That's a good question. One of the important topics that we're discussing on the show tonight. And one of the things that we speak about in some of our mentor groups is being economical, resourceful. And that's just, coming together as a community as opposed to being isolated and divided, to be able to share the information.
Right.
Prior to everything with the restrictions and everything, now it's getting out. But now it's through podcasts and other media channels, definitely just getting everybody informed and reaching out and just sharing the information, make sure everyone is, protected and just informed on what to do and how to reach us and be able to obtain the information, either through social media channels, email, or consultation. We have open door policy. What they call it, like the United Way, where
yes.
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 That is fantastic.
And I got something to say, related question to you that I was saying earlier in my comment. I was saying that it's never too late for a person with aid get their credit started on the right track. But the question I have to you is it ever too early for a young person to get into credit?
Oh, no, absolutely not, because that's where it all begins with family and the youth, just having them monitor and just see us paying attention and being actively involved with this and sharing that information to them. That's one of the things, another topic that we discussed in some of the groups that we listen to. Is one of the things they say is you either come from an informed family or uninformed family.
Right.
And I remember going into the cleaners to pick up some shirts, Asian descent, and they have their children there watching them do business. And they're seeing every day how to run a business.
Yes.
No better education than that, And
no.
There were certain times throughout history where that we was known for those kind of things, but throughout acts of history, we've gotten separated from that. But that's like one of the things we're talking about tonight, just making sure that we inform and insulated within the family to be able to share that information, because the family, that's the wealth. Each individual, a member of the family, we have unique gifts and talents and insights and perspectives.
Yes.
Of value,
That's right.
And ain't that's what you call creating a generation wealth?
Absolutely. That's the starting point, They're the nucleus of everything, and that's one of the things that we talk about in our community too. Successors, what I'm saying? That's what we are and that's where they are. That's what that legacy is. It ain't all about the material stuff, what I'm saying?
Yes.
It's just about providing the information and instruction manual, not only to position yourself to build the wealth, but once you build the wealth, you got to continue to grow the wealth. And
that's right.
Grow the wealth, you got to have the information to protect the wealth, and you got to share that information to the ones that's coming behind you. So, that's the focus is, and like to piggyback and go back to what we said, topic of the show tonight is it all lines up.
Yes, and I'm glad that you came on the show tonight, because we definitely talking numbers with you.
Yes, and we need these numbers to build our community with family homelessness.
Yes.
These families that has became homelessness, Transition to Changes Mission podcast show is an outreach for you at transitiontochangesmission.wordpress.com. Therefore, you can write a message and do an outreach to us for families and situations, because we need this financial information and knowledge that King J that's sharing with you, and all other financial people that can help you in your financial situation. Even though if you ain't in a financial situation, you're always in a financial situation, basically.
Yeah.
That's what King J was just saying. You will always have to keep that knowledge going and share it. And that's why we had King J on here, and he got numbers. And at the end of the show, we're going to give out information that you can get in contact with him. And there will be a link on our show with that. But the main thing is that we are at the starting point of fixing that finance. And these numbers are much needed knowledge to everybody.
When we come back from the break, we'll also be talking about tips and strategies on how you can get your credit to a great number. I'm not really sure about the highest number, but that's a great achievement.
Hey, you can ask King J, what's the highest number on the credit, King J?
Well, it depends on what scoring model they have. Some they go 800 plus, to I think about 835.
Okay. So stick around and we will be back after the break. This is your host, Queen Summers.
And your host, King Summers, with that special guest,
King J.
We'll be back.